In the movie of Mortal Kombat Annihilation, Marjane Holden played the role of the intimidating Shokan known as Sheeva. But even though the film included such a character, she was never given a chance to fight against any of the Earthrealm warriors. I can only imagine what the film would have been like if they never held back with the production or the violence. If Sheeva was given her own fight scene, it would have been difficult to pull off, but anything's better than nothing. Now, in the novel of Mortal Kombat Annihilation, Sheeva did receive her own fight scene. This is how the fight scene goes down as explained in the novel, which takes place after the Earthrealm warriors regroup with the now mortal Raiden. After reaching their location, Liu stumbled across it entirely by chance while following Jade along the Royal Road. Half covered in mud beside a collapsed wall, it was an intricate mosaic depicting King Jared, Queen Sindel, and young Kitana, Edenia's former ruling family, standing amid the faded splendor of their castle topiary. His face lined with sorrow and guilt, he crouched over the tile, brushing a gritty layer of soil off the likeness of Kitana. Liu was still staring at the mosaic in reflective silence when he noticed a batch of shadows falling over it, and it looked up to see that the others had gathered around him. "You okay, bro?" asked Jax. Before he could answer, all 5 of them heard an inhumane battle cry from somewhere nearby. They whipped their heads around and were overtaken by a sudden wave of shock and dismay. Sheeva was poised like a Hindu goddess atop a temple across the road, her multiple arms raised around her body, fists beating the air with naked aggression. As they stood there gaping at her, she sprang down from the roof and landed in a cloud of dust. "What in God's name is that?" Jax said. "Come on, partner," said Sonya. "I thought you liked big women." The sound of booted feet hustling up behind Raiden's group brought their heads quickly around again. Sindel and a team of Outworld warriors had appeared from inside one of the decayed buildings along the highway, ready to block any retreat. "It's a beautiful day for a massacre," Sindel said, cackling. Raiden's eyes snapped to Jade. "They knew we were coming, obviously," she said. "They followed us." "Perhaps," Raiden said. His tone fell just short of outright disbelief, but it may be a blessing in disguise. "We need Sindel to close the portal forever." "You get the queen," Liu told him. He gestured at Sheeva. "I'll get the freak." Raiden nodded to his accord. They broke in separate directions, Raiden charging Sindel at a full tilt run, Liu launching himself at Sheeva with a bicycle kick that sent the multi-armed horror crashing back through the temple wall to her rear. Landing smoothly on the balls of his feet, he took off after her without hesitation. By the time he leaped through the gaping hole, Sheeva was on her feet again, lunging at him, her arms doing their agile death dance around her body, hitting him with a storm of kicks and punches, each blow faster and more deadly accurate than the last. He blocked, shifted, feinted, but her fists came from all sides at once, making it impossible for him to protect himself. As he cocked his elbows to ward off a double palm heel strike by both of her upper hands, her lower hands swept up and bent his arms out of the way, prying them apart, opening him up to the full brunt of her attack. Before he could recover, she hook kicked him in the gut, knocking the wind out of him, dropping him to one knee. Dazed, coughing, clutching his middle, he barely recovered in time to avoid Sheeva's body stomp, tumbling out of the way as she came down flat-footed on the temple floor, shattering its tiles in the very spot where he'd been kneeling. An instant later, she launched into the air again, following him, both feet descending with piledriver force. Somehow he managed to stay one step ahead of her, putting spring into superbly developed leg muscles, somersaulting as if he were on a trampoline. But Sheeva was seemingly tireless, relentless. She pressed in at Luke with incredible speed as he came out of a roll, landing a monstrous uppercut to his chin that lifted him off the ground. He sailed through the air like a ragdoll, smashed through the temple ceiling, thudded onto an outside terrace, and was still trying to collect himself when Sheeva came climbing from up the hole, her muscles from her upper back and shoulders a corded mass. As she came scrabbling onto the terrace, Liu sprang to his feet, cocked his right leg and delivered a roundhouse kick to her middle, the leg traveling parallel to the floor, his hip and supporting foot rotating slightly, the ball of his foot connecting with shocking impact as the kick reached the end of its arc. She grunted and staggered drunkenly, doubled over, her arms folded around her middle. Liu moved in for his follow-up, moved in close. By the time he realized he'd been tricked, it was too late. Her mouth widened in the bellow of rage. Sheeva pulled herself up straight and lashed out with a windmill kick that knocked him onto his back with obliterating force. She stood over him for a moment. Her face was a mask of brute and unthinking rage. Then she vaulted high into the air and came hurling back downward directly above Liu Kang, her knees together, her heels coming straight at his skull before she could complete her trajectory. However, a kick flashed speedily from behind her, thrusting up and out in a continuous and linear unit of motion, knocking her clear across the balcony. "Sorry, kids," Raiden said. He slapped his palms together theatrically, looking more like a cook who just fixed a complicated dish than someone who had performed a life-or-death rescue. Raiden tells her, "Date's over." And from his dazed position on the floor, Liu Kang watched Raiden rush in at Sheeva and pound her with a swift volley of blows. Far from out of the game, she countered with her own offensive, clutching his head with two of her hands while smashing him repeatedly with the other pair. Though stunned by her onslaught, he somehow managed to get his legs up to her chest, using it as a springboard, and backflipped out of her grasp. "Could it be true?" Sheeva says, her eyes madly alight. "The great Raiden on the defensive, powerless on Outworld?" "Knowledge is power," Raiden said, "and I know I can still beat a bitch like you." "If you truly believe that, then you know nothing," she said, then cartwheeled over to Raiden and wheel-kicked him onto a nearby pile of rubble. Raiden grabbed a big chunk of masonry and held it out to protect himself, but a single blow from Sheeva smashed it to little pieces. Taking a great swoop of air, he flipped back to his feet and pounded her in the face with a combination of front kicks, knuckle punches, and palm heel strikes. The two warriors battled from one end of the balcony to another, mercilessly throwing, kicking, and flipping one another. For every punch Raiden threw, Sheeva countered with four of her own, making it impossible for him to gain the upper hand, and he could feel himself beginning to tire. Then he noticed several ragged tapestries hanging by a rope on the wall and formulated a hasty, desperate plan, knocking that if it failed, he would only be enraging his monstrous opponent. Moving quickly, he grabbed the rope, yanked it down, and stepped in on Sheeva. He whipped the rope around her fists like a lasso, getting them fouled in its long, twisty length. She roared and thrashed in anger, but Raiden had bought the opening he needed. Without giving her a chance to disentangle herself, he executed a superb quadruple flip that brought his heels into devastating collision with her middle and sent her plunging down off the balcony. An instant later, she crashed to the temple courtyard below with a sickening, fleshy thud. Raiden leaned over the balcony's stone rail, saw her writhe and buckle in a spreading pool of blood. Then her back arched up off the ground and her eyes rolled up, and she rattled out her dying breath, her arms twitching in their final spastic throes. Gasping, every part of him aching like a bad tooth, Raiden turned to see how Liu Kang was doing. "Guess something went right for a change," Jack said, watching Raiden and Liu exit the temple. They looked a little bit banged up, but all things considered seemed in decent shape, which was pretty much the way he felt about after his own fracas with Sindel and the Exterminators. Sindel and the Exterminators, huh? He thought. Good one. Sounds like the name of a rock group from hell. Dragging the unconscious Outworlder over to his companions by her neckband, he let her drop roughly to the ground. "Who finished her off?" Raiden said, nodding down at Sindel. "I saw you leave to help Liu and surprised her from behind," Jade said. Liu slung his arm around her shoulders. "I told you she'd come in handy," he said, a vindicated smile on his face. Raiden said nothing to show he was convinced. And that was the conclusion of Sheeva's true demise in the novel. As you can see, Sheeva's fight scene could have redeemed a portion of the movie. That is, if they did exactly what the novel described. The actress who played Sheeva, Margene Holden, was interviewed in 2001 regarding a role as Sheeva, and she expressed her displeasure with the filmmakers for how they treated her character. She mentioned this: "Here was a character that was one of the most popular in the video game, and they killed her without even so much as a fight, something I was not happy at all. That was one of the reasons I wanted to do the role, was for the sheer fact that there were really great fights in the movie for this character, and they all got cut out." It appears she was right. As you can tell, the filmmakers decided to scrap that fight and give Raiden a fight with 3 ninjas instead. 3 reptilian ninjas. The only good thing about the fight was the music. Nothing else was executed well. In fact, Raiden takes on the 3 ninjas, defeats 2 of them with just a single hit, and the third one simply disappeared after doing some flips. I mean, what's that all about? And in case you're wondering, there are many differences between the novel and the movie. Next time, we'll take a look at another huge difference that could have redeemed another character in the film, Johnny Cage. So with that said, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe if you haven't. But most importantly, be sure to turn on notifications because YouTube won't bother to do its job, even if you're subscribed. I'm finally starting to sell my merch, so be sure to get yourself a mug to go with that twisted grin, or a t-shirt. There's more new merch on the way, but also I'd like to give a big thanks to all my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see your name on every outro of every new video, as well as receive an exclusive video every month, then show your support by donating a single dollar. That's all it takes to receive many perks such as getting a look at the exclusive content. But anyways, I'll see you all in the next video, and remember to have an awesome day.